Hello, this is Rocky Raccoon again. Welcome back. So this video is going to be more a response style video. So I'm going to be responding to idubbbz is in denial by Diesel Patches, but I'll also be touching upon like sex work in general and some of the comments that idubbbz or Ian has made that were mentioned in this video. And so it's going to be kind of overarching, but it'll mostly be focused on Diesel Patches video. So I found this video just to be problematic in a lot of different ways, and I thought this video did a good job of kind of summing up a lot of the arguments that I saw online and in the comment section of idubbbz's video on sex workers. And you know, a lot of these irritated me. So we're just gonna get into it.
Next, I wouldn't consider myself a fanboy of his because the only videos I watched from him were content cops. Here we go. How dare you try to act like you know who I am? I don't know, maybe it's because you made videos since 6 years ago on YouTube. We've kind of grown to know you as a person, seeing how you've been online for so long. Does that mean we know everything about his personal life? No. But from what we've seen over the years, we can kind of have a good idea about what kind of person you are. You've talked a lot of shit, and the fact that you have a girlfriend that's pretty much a complete bitch, it does warrant some criticism.
Okay, so just because you watch somebody on YouTube and just because you consume their content, and you may even follow them in a bunch of platforms, that doesn't really mean that you know them. You know what they put on the internet. And sure, you can maybe devise some kind of idea of who they may be and what their values may be, but at the same time, you don't know them. They are not your friends. They are people that make content that you enjoy, and they make content that they, I would hope, like to make. That's about it. And given the fact that you've just said that you only really watch his content cops, that's really the most that you've consumed, given the fact that his content cops are about a handful of the videos that he has made, and he's made over 270 videos, I find that laughable that you think that not only that you can get a good sense of who Ian is as a person and that you feel that you know him well, but that you can get even a good sense of his content and who he is as a creator online when you've barely watched any of his content. So yeah, the people who are saying that you don't really know him and where do you get off, they're right here. Because where do you get off making this kind of commentary about somebody that you honestly barely even understand because you barely watch any of his content? That's just laughable to me. Even people who are content creators that vlog their entire life on YouTube, like family vloggers, even then, you don't know everything that's going on in their life. You don't really know exactly who they are, which is why, a lot of these videos where they come out and say actually, we have been struggling to make this kind of content and we're going to break up or we're going to get a divorce, or people that, have had recent, cheating scandals that were also a surprise to many in the YouTube community. That just goes to show you, even the people that, are presumably sharing everything with you, they're making sure to share only certain things. And they are making an image for the internet. And that is an image that is heavily curated by them. So, again, you don't know them. Even if they supposedly share the whole life with you, you're not going to know them. So, in this case especially, you, in particular, don't really know him. And I'm not saying I do either. I barely watch his content. But I'm just saying, you don't really have any kind of position here.
Cooks has called out people on their bullshit, and his audience winked to his content harder than 12-year-olds winked to his girlfriend. Essentially what I'm saying is that they were fine with it. But when the tables have turned, we suddenly now have to mind our own business. Which I first have to say is a pretty stupid argument considering his girlfriend puts her fucking taint online. But let's go by that logic. What business did you or idubbbz have ranting on Leafy and Rice Gum? Their bullshit didn't concern you, so why are you so upset? And again, stupid argument. This is all online for us to see. It's open for the public. It's our business if we want it to be our business. It's not like anyone leaked this information.
So this commentary was really baffling to me because Diesel is criticizing how somebody goes about their relationship to what Leafy and Keemstar have done, which is a false equivalency. What Leafy had done was, taking advantage of small creators taking credit for other artists' work, making fun of children and bullying them. And Keemstar is also somebody who takes advantage of smaller creators, has oftentimes used racial slurs, and is a salacious journalist. It's very much so somebody that thrives off of drama and making money. I think these behaviors, one, create a toxic environment on YouTube and very much so perpetuate a lot of the negativity and the toxicity that we see on the internet, especially on social media platforms. And two, these are a lot more harmful to the community in general, especially since they're actively hurting people. Is idubbbz actively hurting people by having a girlfriend that sells, nudes and lewd photos on OnlyFans? No, he doesn't. And if you think that he is, that's kind of a you problem. That's not really an idubbbz problem. It's one thing to call him out for his hypocrisy, which I'll get into later on, but it's another thing entirely to say, like, just because it's on the internet, I get to do and say whatever I want, and thus means you get to make commentary about somebody else's relationship and then say, without any kind of claims, that somehow, there's something wrong with idubbbz in this situation, and that he's like apparently, a simp, which doesn't really make any sense given the definition of a simp, and also somehow like this relationship that they have is inherently wrong in some way, or that a girl is inherently wrong for wanting to, sell nudes or get into sex work in general. So again, you're putting a lot of subjective arguments onto here and assuming that means it's criticism just because you had it. And it ain't here, Chief. It ain't it, Chief. So.
It's because he's a hypocrite. He makes content cop and targets people, but he himself have girlfriend whoring herself. And he does nothing about it. What am I gonna do? Do you think I should just take a shotgun to her head? No, bitch. It's time to die now.
How about telling her no? Using an extreme example as a counter argument doesn't exactly help you because there are many options you could take in that scenario.
Okay, so first off, you're assuming that the right answer in this scenario with regards to, what idubbbz should do with his girlfriend wanting to sell OnlyFans content is to tell her no. And that assumes that is the right way to go about it, and that is the only way to go about it. And you are, what are the kids calling it? Wrong. Because you know why? She is allowed to want to do that. And yeah, granted, I will say I can understand why it would make people uncomfortable, just given how we've been socialized in the society in the United States, and really in most societies. So I can understand why that would make somebody uncomfortable. However, I don't think just because it makes you uncomfortable, that should automatically mean that your girlfriend can't do what she wants with her own body. I think you guys need to have an ongoing discussion about this and see whether or not you can maybe work through some of your issues regarding women's sexuality and how they like to express that and how they like to commodify that before you decide just flat out without considering her point of view and why she wanted to do that, and then saying no. I honestly don't think it's right that you would think it's okay to just not consider what your significant other wants to do with their life and their body and just flat out say, because you are uncomfortable and it makes you feel bad, that, oh no, we're just going to say flat out no. That was actually the right answer. It's like, no, it's not. I understand feeling uncomfortable with this concept. I get it. But at the same time, you also do have to, be a good partner and actually listen to what your partner wants to do. That's how you actually have a good functioning relationship. It's not about, just unilaterally making decisions for other people. That's not how that works. You need to have a discourse about this. And if it honestly, after all that talking, really does make you uncomfortable, then yeah, I can understand, Ian's girlfriend Anissa being like, you know what, okay, if it really makes you that uncomfortable, and even after talking about it, and you considering it, actually listening to me, even after that is still going to make you uncomfortable, then okay, I won't do it. But given the fact that Ian is okay with it, he did the right thing. And letting her know that, and they discussed it seemingly from what idubbbz is implying here, and now she's doing it. I don't understand what's anything wrong with that. If anything, that really speaks to a healthy relationship. That they, that both of them one, know what's going on and are both of them okay with it.
You think these fucking retards would actually do a smidgen of research? Because, like, I did it, and I found the potential hypocrisies. Funding for the slut shirt is actually very, very low. Skanktown, USA, softcore porn all over the walls. You know, like, I'm not saying that women should be sexualized or shouldn't be. I'm just saying that there is the market for it, so it makes sense that they would do it. I would say skank and slut. But never was that part of my argument. It's just flavor. It's just flavor. Like, in the future, I'll probably say slut and skank again.
Also, good job leaving out this clip.
You're a whore. You're a whore. Just admit it. You're a whore. You whore yourself out online. You whore yourself out in front of your family and your friends. You're a whore, plain and simple. Just admit that you're a whore and a slut and a harlot.
I don't know why everyone thinks that, like, I made a stand. I stood on top of a hill and I proclaimed to all my loyal Christian followers, no porn shall ever cross my screen. No woman that I date shall ever lower her standards to the point of being half naked.
Yep, that's the only reason why we're upset. It's not you being a cuckold or anything.
2 points here. Okay, 1, I do agree that Diesel Patches is right, that idubbbz is being a hypocrite. When you are talking about women using dehumanizing language and also pejorative language that very much so is putting a lot of negative value on women being sexual beings, but then also saying that you actually respect women and respect sex workers is really hypocritical. It just is. And you can't say that words are just flavor and they don't have anything to do with your argument, when in fact, you know, these words have meaning to them and they have implications to them. Just because you're a white guy, I understand how that gives you a lot of power in society, but you don't get to like unilaterally just change what words mean and what they imply and the connotations of these words, especially when you're using them in a context that honestly undermines your argument. No, there's no such thing as words just having like flavor to be whatever you want them to be. Like, words are defined by their usage, and the way that people use the words skank and whore and slut are to demean women for being sexual and dressing more immodestly and behaving in a way that is not pure. So for you to just somehow think that that has nothing to do with what you're talking about and that has nothing to do with how you may think about women is just wrong. That just is. I'm sorry. Like, so yeah, you're being a hypocrite there. However, oh my God, Diesel, I'm kind of worrying about you because what does being a cuckold have to do with anything? First off, who cares if he's a cuckold, right? Who cares? Why is that an argument that you have? Like, I just don't really understand that at all. Like, I don't know how that's like our argument for anything. Second point. Why is it necessary to criticize somebody over, as the definition states, over being a man whose wife is sexually unfaithful? What does it matter? Now, this just seems an attack on his masculinity, not really an argument about his behavior somehow being wrong. It's just, you know, you thinking that it's bad that he's maybe emasculating himself, which, again, isn't really an argument. It doesn't matter because it doesn't mean anything. Also, he's not being a cuckold because his girlfriend isn't being unfaithful. You know why? Because they actually had an agreement that this was okay. And being unfaithful means that you are doing something by violating their trust. It just seems more a jab at Ian's masculinity rather than an actual criticism. Because being critical means that there are actions that are actually actively harmful and or they're hypocritical to what that person's ideology or what they used to say. Those are the things that you can obviously check and you can show. Like, we can definitely see how, you know, Ian's language is hypocritical given his stance on sex work. We can say that. But I don't really understand how being a cuckold means anything regarding his hypocrisy, nor do I understand how it means anything regarding any harm that he's doing to the community. So this just seems like you have a problem with him being okay with something that his girlfriend is doing. And that seems to be just a you problem. Also, he's not a cuckold. I don't really think you know what words mean. And that's also concerning. So this argument's bad. We love to say it.
I think this is one of the most important opinions to highlight because it really demonstrates a severe lack of real-world experience when you're saying that future jobs are going to be harder to come by because of an OnlyFans account. Like, if you think this affects your standing or your social credibility in getting jobs, you are so sadly mistaken.
Oh my god, you are in such fucking denial. I've already told this story twice on my channel, but I'll just do it again. In middle school, I had a teacher named Mrs. Doty, and my friend found a picture of her on Facebook with a dildo in her hand. After my principal found out, she got fired. And as a bonus, for the rest of the year, we called her Mrs. Dildoty. Shit like that can definitely affect your chances getting a job.
Alright, so you actually made like one good point. Yay. So, yeah, you're right. And idubbbz is just very wrong here. Like, it obviously does affect your life. I mean, it varies how much it's going to affect your life, depending on whether or not you already have a job, depending on how far your employer is going to be looking into your social media history. But yeah, it definitely can affect your job. I don't really think that it should because it's very judgmental, and I'll get more into that later on. But yeah, it definitely does. And, you know, Diesel had his own personal anecdote, and I've seen stories of women who did porn that, you know, realized they could no longer do jobs with, you know, children, like teaching, and other women who, you know, didn't participate in sex work at all, but had their nudes leaked or had their sex tapes leaked, and that interfered with their job prospects. Even when they were leaked without their consent, and it was basically revenge porn. So Ian came out with this video very defensively, and I understand why, but then at the same time, it led him to make a lot of fallacious arguments and to make connections that weren't really there. Like with this analysis of the Atosi video, he completely missed the fact, because I've watched this video, that Atosi was really just going down the list of reasons that people gave on Twitter as to why idubbbz's girlfriend having an OnlyFans was bad. This wasn't him endorsing these ideas. This was him just writing them down and talking about what that meant. That's it. And again, the way that he was talking about, like, you know, stooping to this point, he was really referencing that in terms of how Anissa herself had talked about what it meant for her and for anybody else to have an OnlyFans, how she saw it. That was her opinion. And then now she, you know, since she said that, you know, if you're a Twitch streamer that's just like been kind of down and out and has been given a lot of criticism, like that's your only last resort if you don't have anywhere else to go, if you don't have that much of a fan base now because of things that you've done. And that's kind of what he's talking about. And the fact that you would so woefully mischaracterize that video just really irritated me, and I can't believe that you would do that, especially when he's a member of the commentary community just like you. And he gives a lot of interesting takes. I don't agree with everything that he does, but I just thought this was like, out of all the things you could have gotten from that video, you got literally like the most uncharitable interpretation of what he did. So he's definitely wrong here.
And I will also say, if you want to morally grandstand, one of the shittiest things that I think you can do morally is judging someone about what they did previously and not hiring them even though they're qualified for the job.
idubbbz, you're legit a fucking retard. Nobody in a sophisticated business wants someone like your girlfriend to represent them. You know why? Because it affects them financially. It has nothing to do with goddamn morals. I think it's perfectly reasonable for someone not wanting Miss Baloney Vagina to work at their company.
So I understand why employers would not want to hire women based, in this context, we're talking about women based on their sexual history or what they've done as a sex worker. That is very much so a reality. Like I already mentioned, that is obviously something that people consider, especially when they're thinking about like who they would like to be representing them as a face of a company. However, is idubbbz right in saying that it's morally wrong to do that? Yeah, it is. I would argue also ethically wrong to do that. And Here's why. Because you are judging somebody based on an aspect of who they are, and also a job that literally is not illegal, is done with consent, and isn't hurting anybody. You're making a judgment about their character, but it's based on a very judgmental idea of sexuality and sex. And so you are thus preventing people from being able to explore that and commodify that because you think it's icky and gross. Yeah, I think that's wrong. Especially if they're qualified for the job in the example that idubbbz gave. Yeah, that is wrong to do that. Because you're putting a lot of weight and implication and connotation on something that inherently doesn't have that. Being sexual is just that. It's value neutral. There's nothing wrong or right about it. It's just a part of life. It's a part of being a human being. I think the way that you get into it, like if you're getting into it with a negative aspect, if you're forced into doing sex work, then yeah, I would think that's bad, obviously. But it's not because sex in and of itself is bad. It's because, you are being forced into it, thus, performing sex acts without your consent, or you're using sex for validation. Does that mean, again, it doesn't mean sex is inherently bad. It just means the way that you go about sex can be negative, and that can imply something. But if you don't know that, there's nothing to gain from that other than the fact that, they like to have sex, or they like to make money off of sex, or they like to take pictures of themselves naked. That doesn't really mean anything unless you actually talk to them, because there could be a whole host of reasons why they do that. But the images and and pornography in and of themselves are not necessarily bad. It's just you decide to put the weight on it that doesn't inherently exist. So.
In my head, there would be so many other things to do and make money before stooping to this point.
I find it very fascinating that a commentary YouTuber who's known for criticizing others, much like me, would be willing to take the position that sex work is beneath them.
How is that the same at all? There is zero correlation between commentary channels and a man who allows his girlfriend to show off her body to other guys. As for the people slut-shaming the women who go out there and basically sell them...
Again, you're putting a lot of weight and implication on this idea of a boyfriend letting their girlfriend do things. Again, you don't control your partner. I don't know why you keep talking in this language. I don't necessarily know if that's the way that you think about women, but that is definitely the way that you talk about them. And it's definitely the way you talk about a relationship. And I think you're wrong here. It's not about, Ian letting his girlfriend do something necessarily. It is about Ian and Anissa having a discussion about this, and he saying that it's totally fine for you to go and do that thing. Then it's on her as to whether or not she wants to continue doing that. They made this decision together. She took his consideration to heart into making her own decision. You make it seem like she doesn't have any autonomy at all by the way that you're talking about this, as if somehow, in order for her to do something, she has to ask Ian to do it. And that's just not how people work. First off, people don't just ask for permission for their significant others. This isn't 1800s, okay? But second of all, she's allowed to make her own choices. But I think she was respectful in talking to Ian about these choices that could potentially hurt him. Because in the way that we live in this society, wanting to profit off of your body is still kind of a taboo subject, and it's still something that can make people uncomfortable. So I can understand wanting to talk to your boyfriend about that. How dare you say that somehow, it is wrong to be okay with your girlfriend wanting to sell nudes? I don't understand that. I don't understand that at all. I don't understand how to make that argument. You just can't. There is no, what argument is there? Because again, that would have to imply that somehow, being a sexual person and wanting to commodify that is wrong. And then somehow, those people wanting to do work and sex work is somehow can't be in a relationship at the same time, which again is really disgusting and gross. Work is work, and it's not just going to somehow change its definition just based on the fact that you're doing sex work. people can actually separate emotions with sex and actually just want to do it for a job and do it because it's fun and not because it means something deeper. That may be the way that you conceptualize sex, that may be the way that you conceptualize what sex work is, but that's not the reality for a lot of people. And at least the way that Ian and Anissa have talked about it, that's not how they think about it either. And so you're projecting a lot of your own ideas onto people, and you need to stop, because that's not how you make any kind of actual analytical criticism, okay? That is how you make morally grandstanding, holier-than-thou arguments that honestly aren't really arguments at all, but you're just having an opinion and thinking that if you just sound objective enough, that can actually be the criticism that you can give somebody else. But in this case, it's not. So cool your horses, bro. Like, honestly, Jesus Christ.
Themselves. This notion that this is a retarded opinion is kind of stupid. Now, again, I don't really care if you go around and suck a bunch of cocks, but don't act like it's a normal, healthy thing. People are reasonably gonna judge you.
Okay, this is where you're also like very wrong. Like, what evidence do you have to say that somehow being very sexual and, in your case, wanting to suck a bunch of cocks is wrong, or is somehow immoral, or something that means like some kind of defect to that person's character or their well-being or who they are as a person? What is your evidence for that, other than your opinion that you think there's something wrong? Because that's all that it is, seems to be, is opinion. A lot of this video is about your opinion, and it's not really based on fact or actually having good logical arguments. Because again, like I already mentioned, sex is inherently value neutral. Sex is what you bring into it. For example, like sex in the context where consent is not given is, one, sexual assault, but it is also bad and wrong because you are violating somebody else. Sex in the context of a loving relationship where both people consent to these acts and both people want to do them, I think that's inherently good. Sex in the context of consent, but nothing more than that, as in there is no emotions involved, and it is in the context also of a job, of exchanging labor for money and exchanging your product for money. I think that's also inherently good because, you get to make money, you get to make a profit, and you also get to make a product that people can consume and generally enjoy. And so thus, porn is going to be whatever you make of it. So if you are going to, use porn in a, respectful and in a safe way, then porn is good. If you aren't, though, and you, don't use it responsibly and you become addicted, then porn is bad. Porn is going to be bad for you. So again, like, a lot of this, whether or not it's good or bad, has to do with the context and has to do with the people that are involved, not necessarily the acts in and of themselves, because sex can be a lot of different things. That's just kind of how that works. Like water. Water is pretty neutral. Like, it can be good and it can be bad depending on the context. It can be really good if you're drinking water of your own volition and nourishing your body, watering plants, putting out a fire. But it can also be bad, like in the context of, floods, or in the concept of drowning. Why I mention all of this is because generally context is going to make or break a lot of different things and what we can think about them. And you haven't given one argument as to why sex in the context of a job or a woman having a lot of sex, why that's bad and why that's wrong and why that's worthy of judgment. You just presuppose that everyone understands that and then is going to agree with you. You're assuming that agreement, when in reality, like, not everyone agrees with you. Maybe all the people in your corner agree with you, but I don't. And a lot of feminists don't agree with you. I would argue probably most, if not all, feminists don't agree with you. And the reason for that is that sex has often been so negatively maligned against women, and also very much so used to characterize women in a negative way. Oftentimes, it's in the context of damnation and sinning. It's from a religious perspective that oftentimes women's sexuality is demonized and used to control us, to keep a sense of purity and sanctity, lest, we be damned to hell. So I think the way that you're going about even talking about this topic is assuming a lot of different kinds of morals and ethics and understandings of human sexuality that, one, cannot be presupposed, but two, have no arguments to base that is the presupposition that we should have. I just don't really get it. It's honestly one of the more frustrating response videos that I have ever seen, and it really irritates me that you made this. I've agreed with other videos that you've made. I think I've watched like one or two of your videos. I think they're both on Ethan Klein and H3H3. But this ain't it, Chief. Like, you kind of just went off the rails here, giving a lot of weird, puritanical, and judgmental arguments that really had no basis in any kind of fact or logic. It was just you spouting your opinions and then saying it as rationally and as objectively as possible, thus seemingly passing it off as an objective fact when in reality it's just your subjective opinion. So, yeah, like, just because you think about sex in a certain way doesn't mean that, one, that we all should, and two, that is the right way to think about it. The way that we thought about sex and the way that we thought about human sexuality, specifically in the context of women, has, one, oftentimes been used to control women and to control how women express themselves, and also to very much so provide ownership of women. But two, it is also very much so transient. It changes with time, it changes between cultures, and it continues to change to this day. And so with something that is so transient, and something that oftentimes is so variant between cultures, you would think if it is actually so negative as the way that you say it is, if it's so like somehow like human nature that having a lot of sex or having sex as a job out of the context of a relationship is somehow really bad and immoral and somehow a defect to your character, we would have seen that across all cultures, but we don't. We generally see that, especially in cultures where women are often subjugated to negative stereotyping, to laws that actually limit their behavior and limit what they can do in society, and also just limit the ways that they can express themselves, period. And so unless you can actually give any kind of actually good arguments as to what you're saying, most of this video means nothing. So yeah, thank you for watching my video. I had so much fun just ranting at my phone, because that's what we just gotta do in this time. But yeah, all in all, stop being so judgmental to women doing whatever they want with their bodies just because you don't agree with it, and maybe reconsider why you don't agree with it. Okay, maybe you should allow women, and really anybody, to be able to express themselves the way that they want to and commodify their bodies just like anybody else, okay? Like, we commodify literally everything about who we are. Why not commodify your genitalia? I don't understand it. Like, models commodify their bodies, they put on clothes, and people sell clothes because of their bodies. Why not just sell your bodies and its pleasures? I don't really understand it. It's what everybody else is doing in capitalism, so I don't really understand how this can be any worse than anything else, unless you're coming at it from a pseudo-intellectual but completely moralistic view. Then yeah, I can understand why. But is that a good argument? No. So, all right. Well, have a great day, guys.